The desert sun burned across the Nevada sky, bleaching the world into endless shades of gold and gray. The U.S. Army Marksman Training Facility stretched across miles of dry wasteland, isolated, silent, and merciless. Every echo of gunfire seemed to vanish into the heat haze before it could fade. For most men here, this was a dream, a chance to prove they belonged among America's finest shooters. But for one man, it was a promise. Ethan Cole stepped out of the transport truck with nothing more than a duffel bag and a folded photograph tucked in his pocket. The wind tugged at his uniform as if testing whether he truly belonged. He didn't look like a soldier. His posture lacked the hardened sharpness others carried. His hands still bore faint scars from years of fixing engines, and his eyes gray. Steady and hauntingly calm, watched everything without expression. He wasn't there for medals. He wasn't there for pride. He was there for his brother. 2 years earlier, Sergeant Daniel Cole, U.S. Army Sniper Division, had been killed in action during an overseas mission. The details were vague: an ambush, bad weather, a compromised extraction. Ethan never asked for the official story. He already knew how war chewed up good men. Daniel had been the family's hero, the man who taught him how to aim a .22 rifle and how to listen to wind patterns like a language. They were inseparable, the dreamer and the builder. When Daniel died, Ethan's world folded into silence. The Army wasn't part of Ethan's plan. He was a mechanic by trade, the best in his small Colorado town. He'd spent years repairing broken machines, believing he could fix anything if given time. But grief changes a man. One night, sitting in his garage surrounded by engine parts, he stared at Daniel's old service photo and whispered, "If I couldn't fix his fate, I'll fix his dream." And so he enlisted. When he arrived at the training base, recruits immediately noticed his quiet demeanor. They came from all over: farm boys, ex-Marines, police snipers. But Ethan looked different. He was older than most rookies, softer spoken, almost detached. During the first briefing, when the instructor barked orders, Ethan stood still, absorbing everything like a sponge. His bunkmates joked that he was the philosopher soldier, always thinking, never talking. Sergeant Marcus Hawley, the head sniper instructor, was a legend. A grizzled veteran of 20 years, Hale's presence alone could silence a crowd. He'd seen war's worst corners: jungles, deserts, cities, and survived them all. When he walked past the rows of trainees, his sharp gaze dissected every flaw. But when he stopped beside Ethan, he lingered for a moment. Something about the rookie's stillness intrigued him. There was no fear, no excitement, just focus. "Name?" Halle asked. "Cole, sir. Ethan Cole." Halle raised an eyebrow. "Any relation to Sergeant Daniel Cole?" Ethan nodded once. "My brother." A flicker of recognition crossed Hale's eyes. "Your brother was one of the best I ever trained." His voice softened slightly. "You've got big boots to fill, son." Ethan's reply was quiet. "I'm not here to fill them, sir. Just to understand why he walked in them." For the next few weeks, Ethan blended into the background. He was neither the worst nor the best recruit. His physical tests were average, his tactical drills slightly below par, and his speed unimpressive. But when it came to anything mechanical, disassembling rifles, adjusting scopes, or repairing misfires, he was unmatched. While others simply cleaned their weapons, Ethan studied them, analyzing every screw and spring. He treated rifles the way some treated living beings, with patience and respect. During their first live fire exercise, the recruits were handed standard issue M201 sniper rifles. The targets were placed at 800 meters, a daunting range for beginners. Most struggled to align their breathing with their shots. Ethan watched quietly as one recruit missed by feet, another by inches. When his turn came, Halle stood behind him, observing. Ethan adjusted the scope, corrected for wind, and waited. He wasn't thinking about the crowd, the noise, or even the instructor. He thought about the mechanics of the shot, the bullet's rotation, the drag, the temperature shift. Then calmly, he exhaled and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The steel plate rang in the distance. Bullseye. Hale leaned slightly closer, watching as Ethan reloaded with the same calmness, hitting another perfect shot seconds later. There was no celebration, no grin, just the same quiet precision. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Hale asked. Ethan shrugged. "My brother used to test me. He'd set up soda cans 100 yards away. Told me if I could hit 3 in a row, I could fix his rifle. I always wanted to fix it." That night, while others celebrated their first pass on the range, Ethan stayed behind in the armory. The metallic scent of gun oil filled the air as he cleaned his rifle with obsessive care. He didn't see weapons the way soldiers did. He saw systems, machines that could be improved. He noticed micro-imperfections in the bolt carrier, slight warping in the scope mount, and began sketching ideas in a small notebook. Micro-tension stabilizer, recoil dampening brace, thermal compensation ring. Sergeant Hale entered quietly, watching him work. "Most men polish their rifles and call it a night," he said, lighting a cigar. "You look like you're building a spaceship." Ethan didn't look up. "Everything can be better, sir. Even a rifle. Especially when it decides life or death." Hale smiled. "That's the kind of thinking that makes a sniper dangerous." In the following days, Hale took special interest in Ethan's progress. He pushed him harder, testing his endurance and focus. During one brutal windstorm training, Ethan's shots drifted wildly off target. Frustration flickered across his face for the first time. Hale knelt beside him and said, "You can't control the wind, Cole. You can only respect it." That night, Ethan stayed awake studying ballistic charts, calculating how to predict wind shifts using temperature patterns and terrain heat waves. The others laughed. The mechanics doing math homework now. But Hale said nothing. He'd seen that look before, the look of a man who learns through obsession. By week 5, Ethan was quietly becoming one of the top marksmen in his group. Not through strength or speed, but through adaptation. He adjusted his rifle's barrel harmonics, modified his scope mount with hand-cut washers, and even began crafting his own rounds in the reloading bay. When an instructor asked what he was doing, he replied simply, "Making the rifle understand me." Word spread quickly through the camp about the quiet mechanic who could outshoot trained soldiers. Some respected him. Others mocked him behind his back. But Hale, who had seen the arrogance of countless naturals, knew this was different. Ethan wasn't trying to be better than anyone. He was trying to be perfect for a reason only he understood. One evening, Hale found Ethan sitting alone outside the barracks, staring at the desert horizon. The sunset painted his face in orange light, the picture of his brother folded in his hand. "You miss him," Hale said quietly. Ethan nodded. "Every shot I take feels like I'm talking to him. Every miss feels like I'm letting him down." Hale sat beside him. "You'll never stop missing him. But you can make sure his story doesn't end with a bullet. Maybe yours starts with one." Ethan looked up, eyes steady. "Then I'll build the shot that finishes his story." The desert wind carried the promise of something larger that night, a spark of destiny forming in silence. No one at the base could have guessed that the quiet mechanic sitting under that vast Nevada sky would one day rewrite the limits of human precision. The rookie who fixed machines was about to fix the impossible. Dawn broke over the Nevada desert like a quiet warning. The sky was painted in streaks of orange and gray, and the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the air. The recruits lined up along the training ridge, rifles slung across their shoulders, eyes burning from lack of sleep. Sergeant Marcus Hale's voice cut through the dry wind. "Today's about patience, not pride," he barked. "You can hit a target at 500 meters? Good. Try doubling that when the wind hates you. Ethan Cole stood near the end of the line, calm and silent. His rifle, clean to a mirror's gleam, rested in his hands like something sacred. He wasn't the strongest recruit there, nor the fastest, but he was always the last one to leave the range. His precision came not from instinct, but from understanding. While others practiced squeezing the trigger in rhythm with their breath, Ethan studied the wind. He would scoop up sand, toss it lightly, and watch the way it twisted through the air. He didn't just feel the wind, he measured it. Every direction, every flicker, every gust told him a story. The others thought he was strange. "Cole's over there playing with dirt again," one joked. Another laughed. "Yeah, he's calculating dust particles instead of shooting." Ethan didn't respond. He wasn't there to prove them wrong. He was there to prove something to himself and to his brother. That evening, while the rest of the recruits relaxed in the mess hall, Ethan slipped into the base workshop. The room smelled of machine oil and old metal. Under the flickering light, he laid out pieces of his standard-issue sniper rifle and began working. His mechanical instincts took over the same ones that had helped him rebuild engines since he was 15. He adjusted the firing pin tension, polished the bolt carrier, and reshaped the trigger guard for smoother recoil absorption. He wasn't modifying it for looks. Every change had purpose. Every fraction of a millimeter mattered. On the corner of his workbench sat a notebook, half filled with scribbles and formulas. He was trying to solve a problem: how to stabilize the rifle during ultra-long-range shots where even the Earth's rotation could alter a bullet's path. He designed a custom bipod that could absorb micro-vibrations and a specialized scope mount that allowed micro-adjustments to compensate for barrel heat. He didn't have professional tools, just scrap metal, sandpaper, and his engineer's mind. When Halle found him there past midnight, he wasn't angry. He watched quietly for a while before saying, "You're not modifying that thing, are you?" Ethan paused. "Improving it, sir." Halle stepped closer, curious. "You think you can outsmart the government's design team?" Ethan smiled faintly. "No, sir. But I think I can make it understand me better." Halle chuckled. "You're a strange one, Cole, but strange men make history." The next day's exercise was wind simulation day. Artificial fans lined the desert range, whipping sand into chaos. The trainees had to shoot moving targets at 1,000 meters while dealing with random wind bursts. "Real snipers don't get perfect weather," Halle reminded them. "They get reality." The recruits struggled. Bullets curved off course, hitting dirt, missing targets by meters. Ethan studied, silent as always, adjusting his new custom bipod, fine-tuning the angle. He didn't shoot right away. He waited, feeling the pattern of the wind, timing its rhythm like a musician counting beats. Then he fired. The target clanged. "Lucky hit," someone shouted. But Ethan adjusted slightly and fired again. Another hit. Then another. 3 in a row. Sergeant Hale's lips twitched upward. "Luck doesn't repeat itself that perfectly," he muttered under his breath. When Ethan turned to leave, he overheard the murmurs. "The mechanic's at it again," one recruit whispered. "He probably wired sensors to his rifle." Halle silenced them with a glare. "You all keep shooting like that, and he'll be your instructor in 6 months." Over the next few weeks, Ethan's methodical approach started turning heads. He began outperforming recruits who had years of experience. But it wasn't about speed, it was about consistency. Every shot he took seemed deliberate, controlled. During the 1,200-meter trial, his spotter, a gruff corporal named Duran, was skeptical of Ethan's custom rifle. "This thing looks like it came from a scrapyard," Duran scoffed. Ethan replied softly, "Sometimes the best engines aren't born in factories, they're built in garages." When the test began, Ethan hit 4 out of 5 targets cleanly. The fifth missed by inches, but instead of frustration, Ethan smiled. "Temperature shift," he murmured, writing notes on a small pad beside him. Duran stared. "You're writing down your misses?" "Every mistake is a number," Ethan said. "Numbers tell stories." That evening, Halle called Ethan into his office. The sergeant's walls were filled with photos of old units, medals, and a framed map of Afghanistan. Halle handed Ethan a cup of black coffee. "You remind me of your brother," he said. Daniel wasn't the fastest either, but he had that same stare, the kind that sees what others don't. Ethan sipped the coffee quietly. He was born for this. "I'm just trying to understand what drove him." Halle nodded slowly. He believed that precision was its own kind of peace. "You're chasing the same thing." The two men sat in silence, the hum of the ceiling fan cutting through the stillness. Halle finally said, "You ever think about going beyond the manuals? About designing something new?" Ethan hesitated. "I already have ideas, but they're unconventional." Halle grinned. The Army was built on unconventional ideas. If your brother were here, he'd tell you to take the shot. The next morning, Ethan's rifle looked different. He'd painted it matte gray to reduce glare, added a handcrafted carbon stabilizer, and replaced the trigger spring with one from an old hunting rifle for a softer pull. It was no longer regulation standard, but it was his. When he stepped onto the range, Corporal Ryan Vance noticed immediately. Vance was the camp's top shooter and natural marksman, with a cocky grin and a growing resentment for Ethan's quiet success. "Nice toy," Vance sneered. "Gonna use that scrap metal to fix your aim?" Ethan didn't rise to the bait. He simply replied, "Maybe it'll help me see what others miss." Vance smirked. "We'll see about that." The rivalry was born that day. Every time Ethan hit a target, Vance would push harder. Every time Ethan missed, Vance laughed louder. But Halle noticed something deeper, a quiet storm forming in both of them. One was driven by ego, the other by purpose. Late one night, Ethan sat alone outside the barracks, the desert stretching endlessly before him. The stars looked like bullet holes in the sky. He ran his fingers over the rifle he'd built, whispering, "If you were here, Daniel, you'd say I'm crazy. But you'd also tell me to finish what you started." The wind brushed against his face, carrying the faintest scent of oil and dust. Somewhere deep inside, he felt it the same calm his brother once described before a shot. A stillness that didn't belong to the world, only to the man who listened closely enough. Inside the barracks, Halle watched from a window, cigar glowing faintly. He saw the rookie who wasn't chasing recognition or rank. He was chasing truth. Halle knew that men like Ethan didn't just make shots. They made history. By the end of week 8, Ethan's name was whispered with a mix of awe and irritation. Some called him the mechanic sniper. Others called him the ghost, but no one ignored him anymore. And though he didn't know it yet, his self-built rifle, the one everyone mocked, would soon do something no weapon in history had ever done. But for now, he sat under the open Nevada sky, watching the stars and listening to the wind, just as his brother once had. The journey had only begun. The Nevada sun rose cruel and bright over the shooting range, painting the desert in molten gold. A faint mirage shimmered on the horizon where the steel target stood miles away. The heat waves distorted everything except the sharp line of competition brewing between two men. Ethan Cole adjusted his hand-built rifle, every motion smooth and practiced. His custom modifications had turned heads and stirred rumors for weeks. Across the range, Corporal Ryan Vance stretched his shoulders, his standard-issue rifle gleaming under the sun like a trophy. "Let's see if the mechanic still runs on luck," Vance called out, smirking. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sergeant Halley stood behind them, arms crossed, his shadow cutting across the sand. He had arranged today's competition quietly, part skill assessment, part lesson in humility. The challenge: hit 5 targets at increasing distances: 800, 1,200, 1,800, 2,000, and finally, 2,500 meters. It was designed to break focus and test endurance. Vance thrived on attention. He stretched dramatically, earning laughs from other recruits. "Let's make this interesting, rookie," he said, loading his rifle. "Loser cleans everyone's rifles for a week." Ethan's tone was calm. "Fine, but what does the winner get?" Vance's grin widened. "The respect of the base, and maybe Halley stops babysitting you." "Then I guess I'll have to win," Ethan replied softly, his eyes on the scope. The whistle blew. Vance fired first. His first 3 shots rang true clean hits, perfect rhythm. The crowd cheered. "Vance! Vance! Vance!" they chanted. Ethan stayed quiet, observing, calculating. He watched how the wind carried dust trails, how Vance's shots drifted slightly right due to a crosswind from the west. He made mental notes. Patience wasn't his weakness. It was his weapon. When Ethan finally fired, the range went silent. Crack! The bullet hit dead center 800 meters. Then another, and another. His breathing was steady, mechanical. Every pull of the trigger sounded like part of a rhythm only he could hear. At 1,800 meters, the wind shifted suddenly. Vance fired and missed his bullet, kicked up a puff of dust 2 feet short. He cursed under his breath. Ethan adjusted, twisting the dial on his handmade scope mount by barely a hair. He fired. Ping. Perfect hit. Hale's eyes narrowed, impressed. "That's not luck," he muttered. Vance's frustration grew visible. He wasn't used to being outshined. "You think you're special because you built that toy gun?" He shouted across the firing line. Ethan didn't look up. "It's not about the gun, Corporal. It's about understanding it." The last round, 2,500 meters, was the real test. The air shimmered with heat. Vance wiped sweat from his brow and took aim. His bullet whizzed off target by half a meter. The crowd groaned. Ethan adjusted for temperature drop, humidity, and barrel heat, all by instinct. He took a long, steady breath, remembering his brother's words. Trust the math. Trust the moment. He squeezed the trigger. The silence felt eternal. Then came the unmistakable metallic ping. Bullseye. The crowd erupted. For the first time, the base fell quiet in respect. Even those who mocked Ethan weeks earlier couldn't hide their awe. Halley nodded slowly, his weathered face betraying a hint of pride. Vance threw down his rifle, jaw tight. "This isn't over," he muttered, storming off. Halley turned to Ethan. "You didn't just win. You changed the tone of this base." Ethan smiled faintly. "I wasn't trying to win, sir. I just wanted to see how far a man can trust his creation." Halley clapped him on the shoulder. "Then you'd better keep trusting it, because something tells me your limits are farther than you think." That evening, word of the showdown spread like wildfire. Recruits crowded the mess hall, whispering stories about the mechanic who outshot Vance. Some said he used mathematical algorithms in his head. Others claimed his rifle had secret technology hidden inside. Ethan ignored them all. He sat alone at the far table, polishing his rifle under the dull fluorescent lights. Each component gleamed as if reflecting his thoughts. Sergeant Hallaw joined him, carrying 2 cups of black coffee. "You don't look like a man who just made half the base his fan club," he said. Ethan gave a tired smile. "Victory feels empty when it's not the goal." Halley sipped his coffee. "Your brother said the same thing once." After his first confirmed hit overseas, he didn't celebrate either. He just wrote in his journal, "Every shot means something to someone." Never forget that. Ethan's hands stilled. He told me that too. Hale nodded. You remind me of him. The precision, the calm. But there's something else in you, something mechanical. You're not just shooting. You're building your shots. Ethan looked down at his rifle. Machines don't lie, sir. People do. Equations don't fail. They just need the right solution. My brother trusted instinct. I trust precision. Hale smiled. Then maybe you're both halves of the same bullet. The next morning, Ethan woke before dawn. The camp was silent, the desert still asleep. He walked out to the empty range, carrying his rifle like an extension of his arm. He set up a single steel plate at 2,000 meters and took a prone position. He didn't fire immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes, breathing with the rhythm of the desert. The wind brushed over him in soft waves. He counted them, felt their direction, measured their temperature. When he finally opened his eyes, he whispered, "For Daniel." The shot echoed across the valley, striking dead center. Ethan lowered his rifle slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just whispered, "Closer." Because somewhere deep inside, he wasn't satisfied, not yet. Later that week, Sergeant Hallaw announced a new set of drills. "Advanced trajectory training," he said. "We're going to push limits." The recruits groaned. Vance rolled his eyes. "What's next? Shooting satellites?" Hale grinned. "You'll find out." Ethan's focus sharpened. He could feel something building, a challenge that would test everything he'd learned. During training, Vance's attitude grew worse. He started sabotaging Ethan's gear, loosening screws, switching bullet boxes. But each time, Ethan noticed. He said nothing, only fixing the issues quietly. Finally, one afternoon, Hale caught Vance in the act. "Corporal," Hale's voice cracked like thunder, "you touch another man's weapon again, and I'll have you cleaning latrines till retirement." The recruits froze. Vance glared at Ethan. He doesn't deserve to be here. He's not a soldier. He's a damn engineer. Hale stepped forward. And that's exactly why he's dangerous. He thinks. You should try it sometime. The laughter that followed cut deeper than any reprimand. That night, Vance found Ethan sitting by the edge of camp, tuning his rifle under the stars. "Why don't you fight back?" Vance snapped. "You think you're better than me?" Ethan looked up calmly. "No, I just think fighting you would be a waste of precision." Vance clenched his fists, but Ethan's eyes steady, unwavering, made him stop. There was something unsettling about that kind of focus. "You really think this rifle of yours is going to change anything?" Vance asked bitterly. Ethan smiled faintly. "It already has." Days later, Hale gathered the entire unit for a surprise announcement. "End of phase challenge," he declared. "An open competition. Every marksman will attempt a record shot. 3,700 meters. Longest confirmed distance in U.S. sniper history." The crowd erupted in disbelief. "That's impossible." Someone shouted. Hale's voice was steady. "Exactly. Which is why I want to see who's willing to try." All eyes turned to Ethan. He didn't speak. Didn't boast. Just checked the wind, the sun's angle, the condition of his custom rifle. Then he nodded. "I'll try." Vance laughed. "Of course you will, hero. Can't wait to watch you miss." Ethan met his gaze and said softly, "Then keep watching closely, Corporal. You might learn something about trust." The crowd went silent. Even Hale hid a grin. He knew what this meant, not just another shot, but a moment that would test the very limits of physics, patience, and belief. The rivalry that began as mockery had turned into something else entirely, an unspoken war between ego and precision. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan whispered to himself, "Daniel, I think it's time to finish your dream." The desert wind carried the promise of history. The announcement of the 3,700-meter challenge rippled through the base like an electric shock. Even seasoned snipers stared at Sergeant Hawley in disbelief. That distance was more than just long. It bordered on impossible. The farthest confirmed sniper shot in U.S. history stood only slightly beyond that. For most, the challenge was madness. For Ethan Cole, it was destiny. The sun was barely cresting over the Nevada hills when preparations began. The firing range stretched endlessly into the desert, dotted with steel targets that shimmered like distant stars. Engineers were busy measuring, calculating, and setting up high-speed cameras to record every attempt. The air smelled of sand, oil, and tension. Rumors had spread quickly overnight about Ethan's custom rifle, his mechanical precision, and how he'd outshot Vance. Some said Hawley himself had designed this challenge to see if the rookie's legend was real. Others believed it was meant to break him. But Ethan wasn't thinking about fame. He was thinking about his brother. Daniel had once written in his notebook, "The perfect shot isn't made by the best shooter. It's made by the one who understands failure." Ethan carried those words like a mantra. At 0700 hours, the snipers assembled on the range. The atmosphere felt more like a battlefield than a training exercise. Vance was already there, cleaning his rifle aggressively, his pride still wounded from their last competition. Hawley stood before the group, his face unreadable. "Listen up," Hawley began. "This isn't just a test of aim. It's a test of discipline, patience, and respect for the craft. You'll each have one chance to make the shot. One bullet. No retries. No excuses." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And before anyone says it, yes, the target is 3,700 meters. You'll be aiming at a 6-foot steel silhouette. Wind, curvature, humidity, everything's working against you." A murmur rippled through the group. Someone whispered, "That's over 2 miles. "How the hell?" Hawley cut him off sharply. "That's the point. You'll either walk away humbled or walk away in history." He looked straight at Ethan. "Cole, you're up last." Ethan nodded once. His heart was steady, his pulse a calm rhythm. He'd waited for this moment since the day he joined. Not for glory, but for closure. The first few shooters took their turns. They adjusted scopes, calculated angles, whispered prayers, and missed. Some bullets landed hundreds of meters short, others vanished into the desert air without a trace. By the time Vance's name was called, morale was already sinking. But Vance thrived on pressure. He walked to the firing line, his confidence reborn. "This one's for every real soldier who earned his stripes," he said loudly, glancing at Ethan. Hawley didn't react. "Take your shot, Corporal." Vance lay prone, his cheek pressed against the stock. He adjusted his scope, factoring in wind speed, humidity, and bullet drop. He fired. The rifle roared, echoing across the desert. All eyes tracked the bullet through spotting scopes and telemetry screens. Seconds passed like lifetimes. Then came the distant clink of steel. The crowd erupted. A hit. Not center, but a hit. Vance rose, smirking. "That's how it's done, rookie." Hawley nodded slightly. "Good shot, Corporal. You grazed the target at 3,701 meters. That's officially within record territory." Vance turned toward Ethan, pride gleaming in his eyes. "Good luck topping that." Ethan simply replied, "I don't need luck." When Hawley called his name, the world seemed to fade. The murmurs, the heat, even the crowd disappeared. Ethan stepped to the line and laid his custom-built rifle on the mat, a sleek, matte black creation with carbon fiber reinforcement, a self-machined barrel, and a modified Chaytak M300 system. He unfolded the bipod, adjusted the cheek rest, and lay prone. His breathing slowed. Each inhale felt like pulling the desert into his lungs. "Ready?" Halle asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "Always?" Halle knelt beside him. "You know what this means, don't you?" Ethan looked through the scope, his voice steady. "Yes, sir. It means my brother was right. Perfection is possible." Halle gave a faint smile and stepped back. Ethan began calculating, not on paper, but in his head. Temperature, 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind, 9 miles per hour from west to east, variable gusts. Humidity, 19%. Ballistic coefficient, 0.419. He mentally plotted the Coriolis effect, the bullet drift due to Earth's rotation. Every variable found its place like a puzzle fitting together in silence. He closed his eyes briefly. "For you, Daniel," he whispered. The world shrank into the circle of his scope. The target shimmered at the horizon, distorted by mirage waves. He took a long, steady breath, exhaled, squeezed the trigger. Boom! The rifle kicked back. Dust swirled around him. The bullet tore through the air, its supersonic scream fading into the endless expanse. 10 seconds passed. Then 12. Then ping. A clean, perfect strike. Dead center. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The range was silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then the confirmation came through the monitors. Impact confirmed. Center mass hit minus 3,700 meters. The silence shattered. Cheers erupted. Some recruits screamed. Others just stared, dumbfounded. Hale's jaw clenched as he tried to hide his astonishment. Vance's face went pale. "No way," he muttered. "No way he did that." Ethan remained still. He didn't pump his fist. Didn't cheer. He just lowered the rifle gently, exhaling through a faint smile. Distance confirmed, 3,700 meters. One of the officers shouted again, this time with disbelief. Perfect accuracy. 0 deviation. Halle approached him slowly. "Cole, you just broke the base record, and maybe the national one." Ethan nodded, eyes distant. "It wasn't about records, sir." Halle frowned. Then what the hell was it about? Ethan looked at the horizon. Proof that Daniel's dream was real. That precision isn't about talent. It's about patience, understanding, and trust. That night, the base felt different. The rookie everyone once mocked had done what no one thought possible. Videos of the shot spread across military circles like wildfire. Some claimed it was doctored. Others called it divine. But for Ethan, it wasn't about the noise. Sitting alone under the Nevada stars, he placed Daniel's old dog tags beside the rifle. "You'd have loved this view, brother," he whispered. "We did it." He took out a small notebook, Daniel's journal, and wrote his own words beneath the last entry. Perfection isn't a myth. It's the silence that follows when everything aligns. The man, the machine, and the moment. As the wind swept through the desert, he closed the book softly. The next morning, Sergeant Halle held an informal briefing. "Cole's shot will be submitted for official verification," he said. "But record or not, what happened yesterday will be remembered." He paused, then looked straight at Ethan. "You reminded us all what real mastery looks like." Vance stood at the back, silent. For once, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only reluctant respect. He approached Ethan later, extending a hand. "You made me look like an idiot," he said quietly. "But that was something else. Guess I underestimated you." Ethan shook his hand firmly. "You didn't underestimate me. You underestimated the bullet." Vance laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're one strange rookie, Cole." "Maybe," Ethan replied. But sometimes it takes strange people to do impossible things. That evening, Hawley found Ethan again at the range, firing at smaller targets just for practice. "You know," Hawley said, "most men would retire on a shot like that." Ethan chambered another round. "I'm not most men." Hawley smirked. "No, you're not." The sun dipped below the horizon as Ethan steadied his aim once more. He didn't shoot for glory now. He shot for understanding. Every bullet, every click of the scope, was a step deeper into the mind of precision. Because for Ethan Cole, the 3,700-meter shot wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The story of Ethan Cole's 3,700-meter shot didn't stay on the base for long. Within 48 hours, the video footage had leaked, first on private forums for military marksmen, then across social media. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Headlines blazed across news feeds. "Rookie sniper breaks U.S. distance record with custom rifle." "Mechanic-turned-shooter stuns military elite." "Impossible shot or miracle?" For the first time in his life, Ethan Cole had become a name people whispered with awe and doubt. Reporters flooded the gates of the Nevada training base, eager for interviews. How did he do it? Was it luck? Is the rifle legal? But Ethan ignored them all. He stayed inside the base workshop, his sanctuary, polishing the weapon that had changed everything. The rifle rested under warm fluorescent light, its carbon frame gleaming. Every piece was built by his hands. No manufacturers, no secrets, just precision. Ethan traced a finger along the engraved initials on the barrel. D.C., Daniel Cole, his brother's legacy. Sergeant Hawley entered quietly, holding a folder. "You've caused quite a storm, Cole," he said, setting the papers down. Ethan didn't look up. "I didn't mean to." "That's what makes it more real," Hawley replied. "The higher-ups want to meet you. Pentagon officials. Even the Weapons Research Division." Ethan finally lifted his gaze. "They think I cheated, don't they?" Hawley gave a half-smile. "Some of them do. They can't accept that a rookie with a homemade rifle outshot their best tech." Ethan sighed. "Then let them inspect it. Every bolt, every screw." "Oh, they will," Hawley said, leaning against the bench. "But that's not all. There's another group interested, a private defense contractor out of Virginia. They offered to buy your design." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Buy it? It's not for sale." Hawley smirked. "That's what I told them. But you should know, not everyone takes no easily." The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan nodded slowly, his mind already calculating risks beyond ballistics. That night, Ethan sat outside the barracks, staring at the stars stretching endlessly across the Nevada sky. His fame had arrived faster than he'd ever wanted. It felt empty, hollow. He remembered Daniel's last letter before deployment. "If you ever make the perfect shot, don't forget that every bullet travels both ways, one through the air, one through your soul." Ethan understood now. Perfection came with a cost. Footsteps approached. It was Vance. He wasn't smirking anymore. His posture had changed, more respectful, more real. "You're not going to believe this," Vance said, sitting beside him. "They're talking about sending you to D.C. next week. Demonstration for some brass." Ethan chuckled softly. "Let me guess. They want proof the rookie isn't a fluke." "Something like that," Vance said. "But I'll admit, Cole, what you did out there, it changed the game. Even I started reviewing your wind adjustments. You read the desert like a book." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not reading, Vance. It's listening." Vance frowned. "Listening?" "The wind, the mirage, the pressure, they all speak. Most shooters fight the environment. I just work with it." Vance looked at him, half in awe, half confused. You really are different. Ethan turned back toward the sky. Maybe that's why I hit what others can't. The next morning, the base was buzzing with tension. 2 black SUVs rolled through the main gate, their tinted windows reflecting the bright sun. Men in suits stepped out, sharp, cold, deliberate. They introduced themselves as special liaison officers from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Division, DARPD, a rarely mentioned branch of military R&D. Sergeant Halley met them with a firm handshake. "Gentlemen," he said, "welcome to Camp Mirage." They ignored pleasantries and went straight to business. "We're here for the Cole rifle," one of them said, "and to evaluate its operator." Ethan stood silently as they examined his weapon. They measured, photographed, disassembled, and reassembled. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to fascination. "This isn't standard issue," one of the agents murmured. "Custom barrel rifling, counterbalance chassis, and that scope. What modification is this?" Ethan replied evenly, "It's recalibrated for micro-adjustment. Most scopes compensate in clicks. Mine adjusts by angle friction." The man frowned. "You did this yourself?" "Yes." "Without funding? No factory tools?" Ethan nodded. "Just math and patience." The agents exchanged glances. After an hour, they packed their tools and approached Hall. "Your man's either a genius or a magician," one said quietly. "Either way, Washington wants him." Days later, Ethan found himself aboard a military transport jet bound for Washington, D.C. The hum of the engines filled the cabin as he stared out at the clouds below. Across from him sat Halley and Vance, now part of his evaluation team. "You nervous?" Vance asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "No, just wondering what they'll want me to prove this time." Halley chuckled. "You'll be fine. Just remember, politics is trickier than a headwind." When they arrived at the demonstration range outside Quantico, the scale was staggering. Rows of high-ranking officers, journalists, and contractors lined observation platforms. Massive screens displayed telemetry data in real time. General Lawson, a stern-faced man with ice-gray eyes, greeted Ethan personally. "You're the man who made every sniper in the country rethink physics," he said dryly. "I just did my job, sir," Ethan replied. Lawson studied him for a long moment. "We'll see if you can do it again." He gestured toward the range, a barren expanse stretching beyond 3 kilometers. A new target stood at exactly 3,705 meters. Ethan knelt beside his rifle, feeling the familiar weight in his hands. The whispers from the crowd faded into silence. He could feel every heartbeat, every grain of sand shifting under his elbows. He didn't just see the target. He felt it, like a distant rhythm pulsing through the desert air. Hale's voice came softly through the radio. "No pressure. Cole, just the entire reputation of the U.S. Army watching you." Ethan smiled. "Then I'll make it worth their time." He adjusted his scope, accounted for air density, humidity, and the slight magnetic deviation from DC's latitude. His mind was a storm of numbers, yet his body was still. He fired. The bullet vanished into the horizon. Seconds passed. Then came the unmistakable metallic ping echoing across the valley. A perfect hit. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Some officers clapped. Others exchanged stunned looks. Even the general cracked a small, rare smile. "Congratulations, Cole," Lawson said. "You just made history again." That night, Ethan was invited to a private dinner with top officials. The atmosphere was heavy with formality. They spoke in circles about potential, contracts, and national interest. Eventually, one man, dressed in a black suit with no insignia, leaned forward. "You've got talent, Mr. Cole," he said quietly. "But talent like yours doesn't stay private for long." We're assembling a classified sniper unit, global range operations. We want you in. Ethan met his gaze. And if I say no? The man smiled thinly. Then someone else will use what you've built. It wasn't a threat, but it wasn't a choice either. Hall watched the exchange, tension flickering in his eyes. Later, when they left the building, he turned to Ethan. They're going to pull you in deep, Cole. Be careful. Once you step into that world, there's no clean way out. Ethan looked at the stars above the D.C. skyline. I didn't make this rifle for politics, sir. I made it for precision. But if they want to test how far it can go. He paused, his voice quiet but sharp as a trigger pull. Then we'll find out just how far that really is. Back at his hotel, Ethan laid the rifle case on the bed. The city lights glowed through the curtains. For the first time, he wondered if he'd crossed a line, from science into something far more dangerous. He opened Daniel's journal again. A loose page fell out, one he hadn't noticed before. In his brother's handwriting, it read, "Perfection draws power. Be careful who notices." Ethan stared at the words for a long time. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Something told him the real shot, the one that would define everything, hadn't been fired yet. The letter from Washington arrived 2 weeks later. It was short, stamped top secret, and signed by General Lawson himself. Report to Fort Blackridge, Virginia. Clearance Alpha. Effective immediately. Ethan Cole stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. He already knew what it meant. His life was about to leave the visible world behind. Fort Blackridge wasn't on any map. Hidden in a valley of dense pines and mist, it looked more like an abandoned airfield than a military installation. Guard towers rose from fog like ghosts, and every gate bristled with cameras. Holly met him at the entrance, clipboard in hand. "Welcome to the part of the Army that doesn't officially exist," he said. "They call it Project Spectre." Ethan followed silently as they walked through sterile corridors humming with fluorescent light. Behind reinforced glass, technicians tested weapons that looked years ahead of anything he'd seen. Drones whirred, digital targeting systems glowed, and holographic projections simulated landscapes from deserts to tundra. At the end of the hall, a steel door slid open. Inside waited 3 men and 1 woman in plain suits intelligence, not soldiers. "Specialist Cole," the woman said. "I'm Director Ramirez. You're here because of your record shot. Project Spectre requires precision beyond doctrine. You'll train with the best in test equipment no one outside this room will ever see." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Test equipment? Or people?" "Both," she replied. Training began the next day. For weeks, Ethan lived in silence. Mornings started before dawn with long-range drills across canyons. Afternoons with simulation chambers that recreated wind, pressure, and magnetic fields. He fired thousands of rounds, each logged by driven sensors that tracked his heart rate, muscle tension, even micro-movements of his eyes. They called his rifle the Spectre 1, a fusion of his original design and cutting-edge tech. Carbon fiber frame, self-stabilizing bipod, and a scope that adjusted atmospheric distortion in real time. Ethan helped refine it, rewiring the focusing unit himself. Every night, after training, he returned to his quarters and opened Daniel's warm journal. "If precision becomes power, remember to aim at truth." He read that line until the words blurred. One evening, as rain hammered the roof, Sergeant Halle entered Ethan's workshop. "You're not sleeping much," he said. Ethan tightened a bolt on the rifle. "Sleep interrupts the math." Halle chuckled. "Still the same machine." He lowered his voice. "Tomorrow's evaluation. Don't let them push you too far. They're testing limits, not loyalty." Ethan looked up. "Is there a difference?" Halle sighed. "Out here, sometimes not. At dawn, the evaluation began. The target, a metal plate mounted on a moving drone speed 50 kilometers per hour distance, 4,100 meters. Even the instructors whispered. No one had ever attempted such a shot. Director Ramirez briefed him. Wind is variable. You'll have one round. We need proof of capability for field authorization. Ethan lay prone on the damp ridge, wind tearing through the pines. His gloved hands rested lightly on the Spectre 1. The world narrowed to numbers again. Wind, 12 miles per hour SW. Pressure, 29.82. Humidity, 23%. Velocity drift from drone propulsion, plus 3 meters per second. He adjusted, exhaled, squeezed. Boom. The echo rolled like thunder. 6, 7. 8 seconds then, a faint metallic crack. Direct hit. The spotter shouted. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Ramirez lowered her binoculars slowly. Congratulations, Cole. You just rewrote the manual on long-range engagement. Hale clapped his shoulder. You realize you just hit a moving target at over 4 kilometers, right? Ethan nodded, expression unreadable. Still not far enough. After the test, Ramirez approached him privately. Washington's approved a live deployment. Overseas. Classified coordinates. Ethan's jaw tightened. You want to use this technology in combat. She met his gaze. We didn't build it for sport. Hale stepped forward. He's not your weapon, Ramirez. Her tone cooled. He volunteered. Ethan looked between them. Where are we going? Eastern Europe, Ramirez said. A rogue cell acquired stolen targeting data. We need one clean shot beyond satellite range. You'll be inserted at high altitude, one chance only. That night, Ethan sat alone, rain tapping the window like ticking seconds. He opened Daniel's dog tags in his palm. One clean shot. That phrase echoed in his head like a heartbeat. He thought of his brother's last mission, how Daniel had vanished in the same region years ago. Was this coincidence or design? The next week blurred into silence and secrecy. Black Raptor's transport, oxygen masks, night vision gear. Hale accompanied him, assigned as field supervisor. Their helicopter cut through storm clouds toward the Carpathian Ranges, where snow swallowed sound. Feels familiar? Hale asked over the headset. Ethan checked his rifle. It feels inevitable. They landed before dawn on a frozen ridge. Below them, a compound glowed faintly through fog and enemy outpost. The target was a data carrier moving between bunkers, heavily guarded. The distance, 4,230 meters. Ramirez's voice came through the comms. Target window, 2 minutes. Confirm position. Ethan steadied the rifle, calibrating scope sensors manually. He didn't trust automated systems in combat. Wind gusts shifted snow sideways. He visualized trajectory, adjusting for crossdraft and Coriolis tilt. Winds erratic, Hale warned. I know, Ethan murmured. But there's a pattern underneath the chaos. He waited. A flash of movement black SUV approaching the checkpoint. Target acquired. He exhaled slowly. Time froze. One heartbeat. One breath. One trigger pull. Crack. The shot vanished into the blizzard. 7 seconds, 9. Then the vehicle jerked, engine smoke billowing. Mission control erupted. Impact confirmed. Target neutralized. But Ethan didn't celebrate. Through his scope, he saw something a pendant swinging from the fallen passenger's neck. It was identical to Daniel's. His pulse crashed. Zoom in. He barked. The drone feed flickered, cutting to static. Cole, what is it? Hale demanded. Ethan's voice was cold. The man I just shot was wearing my brother's tags. Back at base camp, the storm howled outside, while silence roared inside. Ramirez reviewed footage. It can't be him. Daniel Cole was KIA 5 years ago. Ethan slammed the table. Then why was he carrying my brother's ID? She didn't answer. Halle stepped in. Enough. We'll investigate when we return. Ethan's knuckles whitened. You used me as a pawn. Ramirez's eyes hardened. You volunteered for truth, remember? Sometimes truth bleeds. That night, Ethan sat by the dying campfire, the Spectre one across his knees. Snow hissed as it melted on the barrel. Halle joined him quietly. You think it's really him? Halle asked. Ethan stared into the flames. If it is, then the real question isn't who I hit. It's why they put him there. Hall nodded slowly. Then we find out, together. Ethan lifted the rifle, eyes reflecting the firelight. They built me to make perfect shots. They forgot perfect shots demand perfect answers. The helicopter blades chopped through the night sky as Ethan and Sergeant Halle headed back toward U.S. airspace. Snow still clung to their boots. Blood still pulsed in their ears. No one spoke, not even the pilot. The storm they had left behind in the Carpathians had followed them into the silence of the cabin. Ethan sat motionless, his rifle resting across his lap like a sleeping beast. His mind replayed that moment again, and again the man falling, the faint glimmer of the pendant. Daniel's dog tags. His brothers. He'd been so sure Daniel was dead. 5 years, one folded flag, one sealed coffin. Yet now there was doubt. The kind of doubt that burns holes through the soul. Halle broke the silence first. You need to breathe, Cole. You did what you had to do. Ethan didn't look up. You saw the footage. Tell me I'm wrong. Halle sighed. I saw what you saw. But that doesn't mean it was him. Then who? Ethan's voice cracked, rage wrapped in exhaustion. Why would someone wear Daniel's tags? You think that's coincidence? Halle hesitated. No, I think someone wanted you to see them. Ethan turned his head, eyes like iron. You mean Ramirez? When they landed at Fort Blackridge, the air was thick with tension. Security was doubled. The base that once buzzed with precision now hummed with paranoia. Guards avoided eye contact. Scientists whispered in corners. Something had changed. Ramirez's office was empty. Her desk cleared, her nameplate gone. A classified notice sealed her records, transferred to undisclosed operations. Halle cursed under his breath. That's military code for erased. Ethan clenched his fists. They're covering something up. The more he searched, the more the walls closed in. Access to mission files? Denied. Surveillance footage? Corrupted. The Spectre 1 project logs? Wiped clean. He wasn't just being ignored, he was being erased too. 3 days later, a coded message arrived on his encrypted terminal. FAR OM. Unknown subject. He's alive. Attachment. One blurred satellite photo. The image showed a man walking near an airstrip somewhere in the Balkans. His posture, his gait, it was Daniel's. The timestamp was from 3 weeks before Ethan's mission. Beneath the photo, a line of text. Meet at Grid 9, Arlington. Come alone. At midnight, Ethan drove to Arlington under a cold drizzle. The streets were nearly empty, the city glowing faintly with the reflections of passing headlights. Grid 9 turned out to be an old parking structure near the Potomac. He parked, hand resting on the pistol under his jacket. A shadow detached itself from the far corner, broad-shouldered, wearing a black field coat. Halle, didn't trust me to stay put? Ethan asked. Didn't trust them to leave you alone, Halle said. You're being tailed. 2 black SUVs since Fort Blackridge. Before Ethan could answer, footsteps echoed behind them. A figure stepped into the pale light, lean, nervous, clutching a folder. Civilian clothes. Glasses fogged from the rain. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, raising his weapon slightly. "Dr. Miller," the man stammered. "I worked under Ramirez." Project Spectre wasn't just about rifles, it was about reconstruction. Psychological and biological. Halle frowned. "Speak clearly, Doc." Miller swallowed. They were experimenting with cognitive patterning, resurrecting lost soldiers through neural cloning. Daniel Cole was the first test subject. Ethan froze. "That's impossible." "They recovered partial brain data from field transmissions 5 years ago," Miller continued. "Ramirez believed she could recreate operational instincts in a new host body using synaptic echo mapping. The man you saw in the Carpathians wasn't exactly your brother, but he had Daniel's memories and loyalty." Ethan felt the world tilt beneath him. "You're telling me I shot a clone of my own brother?" "Not a clone," Miller said quietly. "A weapon built from his mind." The rain intensified, drumming against the concrete like static. Halle grabbed Miller by the collar. "Where's the rest of this program?" "Shut down," Miller gasped. "After Cole's shot, Ramirez ordered all assets moved to a secure site in Nevada. The vault. That's where the backups are stored. The mind files. Everything." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then that's where we're going." Miller shook his head. "You can't. It's under joint intelligence control. Triple clearance." "If they know you're coming." "They already know," Halle said, glancing toward the ramp. 2 black SUVs screeched into view. Headlights flared. Doors opened. "Move!" Ethan barked. Bullets tore through the air, sparking off concrete. Halle returned fire, dragging Miller toward the exit. Ethan dropped to one knee, precision firing between the SUV's headlights. 2 shots, 2 men down. He didn't miss. He never missed. They escaped through the side exit, diving into Hale's truck. Tires screeched as they sped into the wet streets, city lights flashing across their faces. "Where now?" Halle asked. Ethan loaded another mag. "Nevada. The vault. If Daniel's memories are there, I'm bringing him home or burning the place down." They drove west for days, through endless highways and empty diners. Miller sat quietly in the back seat, trembling, occasionally giving coordinates. Halle kept the engine roaring, never stopping longer than a few minutes. Ethan rarely spoke. He spent hours staring at the horizon, his mind replaying every detail of the Carpathian shot, every second of wind drift, every vibration in the trigger. Could he really have killed his own brother's echo? Could a man be reborn as data? Somewhere deep inside, a part of him whispered yes. On the 4th night, they crossed into Nevada. The desert spread before them like an ocean of darkness. Miller pointed toward a mountain range. "There it's inside the ridge. No external signs. You'll need retinal clearance to enter." Ethan looked at him sharply. "You have it?" Miller hesitated. "I used to, but they revoked it when Ramirez disappeared. There's one way in now through the maintenance tunnels." Halle smirked. "Sounds like home." They parked a mile away and approached on foot under moonlight. Wind hissed through the scrub brush. The entrance was a steel hatch, half buried in rock. Miller hacked the keypad, fingers trembling. "I can get you through the first 2 gates, but after that." Ethan interrupted. "I'll handle it." The hatch opened with a hiss of stale air. They descended into the darkness. Inside, the tunnels pulsed with red emergency lights. The hum of servers filled the air like distant thunder. Rows of glass pods lined the walls, filled with pale blue liquid. Inside each floated a human silhouette, eyes closed, still but breathing. Ethan's stomach twisted. "What the hell is this?" Miller whispered, Project Spectre's second phase. Neural preservation. They didn't stop with Daniel. He stepped closer to one pod. The face inside was unmistakable Director Ramirez. Hale's voice dropped. They turned on their own. Ethan clenched his fists. They're building soldiers who never die. Memories recycled, souls deleted. He moved toward a control panel, scanning the data feeds. One name flashed again and again on the monitors. Cole, Daniel's status, ACTIVE. Reconstruction sequence in progress. He's alive, Ethan breathed. A new voice echoed through the chamber, cold, mechanical, and calm. Correction, Specialist Cole. He's evolving. Ethan turned. From the shadows stepped a man in a black tactical suit, his brother's face. Older now, eyes burning with artificial light. Daniel, Ethan whispered. The figure smiled faintly. Not Daniel, just what's left of him. The brothers faced each other amid the hum of machines, ghosts staring through glass and circuitry. Hall raised his weapon, but Ethan held up a hand. Don't, Ethan said softly. If there's even a part of him left, I need to know. The man tilted his head. You seek truth. But truth doesn't live, it's built. Then the alarms blared. Red lights strobed. Security teams flooded the corridors. Halle grabbed Ethan. We're out of time. Ethan's gaze locked on his brother's replica. I'm coming back for you, he swore. The figure smiled again. You already did. They escaped into the desert as explosions shook the mountain behind them. The veldt burned, blue light bursting into the night sky like dying stars. Halle collapsed beside the truck, coughing. You got your answers? Ethan stared at the flames, face cold, expression unreadable. No, just more ghosts. He looked down at his rifle, the same one that had rewritten history. Now it was pointing toward the future. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly before Ethan Cole as the first light of dawn cut through the smoke and haze of the vault's destruction. Holly sat beside him, his uniform caked in ash and dirt. The world was too quiet, but Ethan's mind was a storm of calculations, emotions, and memories. The burning facility behind them had destroyed nearly all proof of Project Spectre. Yet one question remained. What had truly survived? Ethan's hands rested on the Spectre One. The rifle was scorched along the edges, but still operational, its barrel as precise as ever. It had been his companion through impossible distances, impossible shots, and impossible revelations. Now it was more than a weapon. It was a lifeline. Halle broke the silence. You sure you want to go back in? Ethan's eyes didn't leave the horizon. I have to. Daniel, or whatever's left of him, is still in there. They didn't destroy everything. Halle rubbed his face, exhaling through fatigue. We've already burned the vault to the ground. Going back means walking straight into the hornet's nest. Ethan's jaw tightened. I don't care about the hornets. I care about the truth. And I care about my brother. The desert wind carried whispers of ash and burned circuits. In the distance, a black chopper approached, circling the area to monitor residual security sweeps. Ethan's heart beat in rhythm with the rotor blades. His mind calculated trajectories, wind vectors, even the curvature of the earth over the miles ahead. Ethan, Halle said, gripping his shoulder, remember, this isn't just about hitting a target. It's about survival. One wrong move, and I know, Ethan interrupted. I'm not shooting at soldiers this time. I'm shooting for answers. He approached the rubble, scanning for signs of the reconstruction pods. Amid twisted metal and smoldering servers, one intact pod remained. It hummed faintly, blue light flickering. Inside floated a figurehead tilted forward, eyes closed but unmistakably familiar. Daniel. or at least the echo of him. Miller appeared from the shadows, limping slightly. "It's not stable," he said, panic in his voice. "They never finished the neural mapping. If you pull him out now, the reconstruction could fail or worse." Ethan nodded. "I understand the risks, but I don't need perfection. I need reality." The pod hissed as Ethan carefully disconnected the power lines, letting the blue fluid drain slowly. Daniel's body floated limply. Ethan's gloved hands grasped the edge. A faint pulse, almost imperceptible, throbbed inside. "It's enough," Ethan whispered. "It has to be." Suddenly, alarms blared. Red strobes lit the desert like fireflies on steroids. Security drones, undamaged by the initial explosion, were converging. Hawley and Miller ducked behind debris as automated turrets activated. "Time to go," Hawley shouted. Ethan looked down at his brother. Daniel's chest rose and fell, shallow but alive. "Hold on," Ethan muttered, lifting him into his arms. The escape was chaos. Bullets spat from automated turrets. Drones buzzed overhead like hornets. Ethan fired the Spectre one from his shoulder as he sprinted across the scorched desert, each shot calculated with impossible precision. Every drone, every turret, fell exactly as he predicted, one by one. Hawley covered his flank, Miller dragging equipment and communications gear. Ethan's eyes never left the distance. The chopper circled above, the extraction point less than a mile away. Then the ground shook a massive explosion ripped through the southern ridge. Debris rained down, scattering their path. Ethan adjusted. Wind speed increased. Dust and ash blinded his view. He slowed his breathing, sighting through the scope. A turret at the far edge activated, laser targeting on Hawley. Without hesitation, Ethan fired. The bullet arced perfectly, hitting the turret's sensor and disabling it before it could fire. "Goddamn," Hawley muttered. "You've turned into a one-man army." Ethan didn't respond. He was focused on the last few hundred meters. The chopper hovered low, its ramp down. "Almost there," he whispered to Daniel, cradling him carefully. They reached the ramp, Miller and Hawley hauling Daniel aboard. The chopper lifted, blades screaming. But the desert was far from quiet. Automated drones pursued, lasers slicing across sand dunes. Ethan climbed aboard last, Spectre one in hand. Ramirez's voice came through the radio from somewhere inside the vault's remaining network. Calm, mechanical. "Specialist Cole, the experiment is incomplete. The variables are still uncontrolled. Return the subject or face total termination." Ethan's hand tightened around the rifle. "I don't negotiate with ghosts." He turned, scanning the desert below. Another drone launched missiles toward the chopper. Ethan adjusted the scope in seconds, factoring trajectory, wind, and distance. He fired. The round traveled further than any human had ever calculated in combat, striking the missile emitter. Explosions painted the night sky, but the chopper remained stable. Hawley shook his head. "I've never seen anyone calculate like that." Ethan exhaled, lowering the rifle. "I don't calculate," he said softly. "I predict. And I don't miss." Once airborne, Ethan held Daniel against his chest. The man inside the pod was awake now, eyes fluttering open, confused and weak. His memories were fragmented, flickering like broken film. "Ethan?" Daniel whispered, voice shaky. "Is it real?" "It's real," Ethan said, tears brimming. "I've got you. We're getting out." Hawley glanced at Ethan. "You know this isn't over. Whoever did this, they'll come after him again." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll be ready. But right now..." He looked down at Daniel. "Right now, you're alive." Back at Fort Blackridge, the three of them remained hidden. Daniel was stabilized in a private medical wing, monitored carefully. Ethan spent nights beside him, repairing the Spectre One, modifying it for any future engagement. The world outside believed Ethan had made one legendary shot and saved a reconstruction subject by chance. No one knew the truth, that Ethan had faced impossible odds, destroyed a secret military facility, outgunned automated weapons, and retrieved his brother from the edge of death itself. Weeks later, Ethan stood on a ridge overlooking the Nevada desert. Hal lay beside him, Daniel recovering nearby. The sun set in streaks of red and gold, wind whispering across the sand. Ethan raised the Spectre One, sighting a distant steel target placed exactly 3,750 meters away. A test shot, a reminder of what he could do, a tribute to what he had saved. He exhaled slowly, adjusted for wind, gravity, Coriolis effect, and squeezed the trigger. Boom! The bullet traced a perfect arc, striking dead center. No one cheered. No one shouted. Just silence. Absolute, perfect silence. Ethan lowered the rifle, feeling a sense of closure he had never known. Hale clapped him on the shoulder. "You've changed everything, Cole. History won't forget this." Ethan shook his head. "History isn't enough. I've got my brother back. That's all that matters." Daniel, still weak but smiling, whispered, "I remember. Thank you." Ethan nodded. "No, Daniel. We did it together." The wind swept over the desert. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fire. For the first time, Ethan felt the impossible shot complete, not just measured in meters, but in heartbeats, memory, and life. The Spectre One rested at his side. The echoes of the past, the ghosts of Project Spectre, the impossible missions, they were all behind him now. But Ethan knew one thing. In the world of long-range precision, one shot could change everything. And sometimes, one man had to take it. As the desert settled into night, Ethan Cole looked forward. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and unforgiving. But for the first time, it was also his to aim for.